Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, accusations of war crimes. Ukraine charging Russia committing those crimes near the capital city of Kyiv. And one of the civilians who was killed, the dean of Slavic Evangelical Seminary. Here at home, a major evangelistic campaign at this weekend's Final Four National College Basketball Championship, as the head coaches for both teams in the title game, Kansas and North Carolina, are professing Christians. Plus, an FBI warning to parents, teenage boys seeing an increase in sextortion on gaming platforms. We'll have a look at what parents can do to protect their young men. Then later, Fox News host Shannon Bream talks with us about her new book, The Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak.
We knew there were still a lot of strong female stories in the Bible that hadn't been told or needed to be elaborated on, so we said, all right, let's plunge into these mother-daughter relationships.
All these stories and more are coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with Ukraine accusing Russian forces of committing war crimes in the city of Bucha, near the outskirts of Kyiv. Among those civilians killed, the dean of Slavic Evangelical Seminary. Dale Hurd is on the story.
Western leaders are condemning the atrocities in the town of Bucha that are believed to have been committed by retreating Russian troops. In the city northwest of the capital, Kyiv, bodies lie in the streets, some victims with their hands bound and others shot at close range. Local officials say it appears some were tortured. Among those killed, the dean of the Slavic Evangelical Seminary, Vitaliy Vinogradov, reportedly killed by the retreating Russian army. Bucha's mayor said hundreds were buried in a mass grave. This satellite image shows a 45-foot-long trench near a church. Residents said Russian troops went building to building checking people's phones for any evidence of anti-Russian activity, and if any was found, took them away or shot them. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy on CBS Face the Nation calls what happened in Bucha genocide.
When we find people with hands tied behind their back and decapitated, such things I don't understand, I don't comprehend. The kids who were killed and tortured, so it wasn't enough just to kill.
The head of NATO told CNN there must be an investigation by the International Criminal Court.
It is a brutality against civilians we haven't seen in Europe for decades.
Beaten back from Kyiv, Russian forces are retreating to the south and east of the country, known as the Donbass region. Sunday, at the Central Evangelical Church in Lviv, the choir sang Amazing Grace. One-third of this congregation are refugees. The sermon was about God's love and loving others. As world leaders learn what happened in Bucha, they're comparing it to crimes committed by the Soviet and Nazi regimes. Some are calling for even tougher economic penalties on Russia. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also made a virtual appearance at the Grammy Awards last night. He said, our musicians wear body armor instead of tuxedos. They sing to the wounded in hospitals. And he said, on our land, we are fighting Russia, which brings horrible silence with its bombs, the dead silence. Fill the silence with your music. Fill it today. Tell our story.
Tell the truth about the war on your social networks, on TV. Support us in any way you can, but not silence.
Following Zelenskyy, John Legend and two Ukrainian musicians performed with images of the war on screens behind them. Galyna Kucher has worked for CBN in Ukraine for 28 years. Even though her family fled the fighting, she stayed behind to serve those in need. During a visit to our Operation Blessing warehouse in Poland, she shared how the relief shipments are giving people the hope that they're not alone.
I came to work in CBN and Operation Blessing about 28 years ago. The first thing Operation Blessing started doing in Ukraine was sending containers of humanitarian aid. Since then, with every situation that has risen, Operation Blessing always responded to people's needs.
But in all those years with Operation Blessing, Galyna never experienced anything as terrifying as the war in Ukraine.
Everything started from Kyiv. The armed forces of Ukraine were about 6 miles from my house. We heard terrible explosions, and the house shook from the noise. We didn't know what to do. Do we need to run, or is there no sense in running away?
Galyna's family left the country when the war began, but she stayed behind to continue serving her people in Ukraine. She was able to make a brief visit to the Operation Blessing warehouse in Poland.
Blessings begin to flow from here in the form of this food and other goods. In 2 or 3 days, it will arrive in Ukraine and go out to all corners of the country. We have a lot of work ahead, but many blessings will come from helping Ukrainians survive this trouble.
Thanks to Operation Blessing donors, Galyna and others on the ground can continue to help families in need.
I think that's why we all exist. So when such circumstances arise, we can help people and support them in anything they're going through. It can be spiritual help or a kind word. It can be bread, water, or assistance evacuating, different things. But someone needs to be not afraid. Someone needs to give hope to people and let them know they're not alone. This is what we are doing now.
And you can help Operation Blessing's disaster relief efforts in this war and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Simply call 1-800-700-7000. Let us know that you want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can also write us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Simply note in the check line, Disaster Relief Fund. You can also text. Simply text OB Crisis to 71777 or visit our website, cbn.com or ob.org. Anything you're able to do is needed and appreciated. Here at home, Democrats are launching a whirlwind of votes and on the Senate floor action today, with the goal of confirming Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first black woman on the U.S. Supreme Court by the end of the week. The Senate Judiciary Committee kicks off with a vote on whether to move Jackson's nomination to the Senate floor. Democrats will then move the nomination through the 50-50 Senate. So far, only one Republican, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, has said that she will be voting for Jackson. But every Democrat is expected to support her, making her confirmation to the High Court basically certain. She will be the third black justice and only the sixth woman in the court's more than 200-year history. Tonight marks the National College Basketball Championship game between North Carolina and Kansas. Saturday, the career of legendary coach Mike Krzyzewski came to an end as North Carolina defeated his Duke team in the semifinals. First-year North Carolina coach Hubert has been very open about his Christian faith, discussing it when he was introduced as a head coach about a year ago.
That's the most important thing to me. You know, my faith and foundation is firmly in my relationship with Jesus. He just is.
Kansas coach Bill Self is also a professing Christian. He first was head coach at Oral Roberts University. Viewers watching the Final Four games this weekend heard a message about Jesus in what's believed to be the largest evangelistic ad campaign ever. It's called He Gets Us, and it aims to help the public reconsider exactly who Jesus is. Senior National Affairs correspondent Heather Sells is on the story.
The campaign is aimed at people who are skeptical about Jesus and don't know much about his ministry. The hope that it will start a new national conversation.
Anxiety ran high, hatred rose. I'll prepare a feast and bring them together, he thought.
The ads portrayed Jesus as compassionate and someone who understands, whether it's our anxiety or a crisis pregnancy.
Her parents thought her boyfriend was the father, but the baby wasn't his. He loved her, so he offered to raise the child with her.
So we looked at Jesus' life and we looked at what American public was going through right now and just said, what are the things that are most relevant to people?
Jason Vanderground of the creative firm Haven worked with Christian donors and a massive $100 million budget to reintroduce Jesus to the public.
The main goal is just to increase the respect in the personal relevancy of Jesus.
The campaign includes 17 video ads, radio spots, and billboards. It also provides opportunities to chat, text, and read passages of Scripture. It's guided by research that shows many adults aren't sure of what they believe and have negative thoughts about Christianity.
The hope of the He Gets Us campaign is that might actually maybe dig a little deeper who Jesus is.
Dr. Ed Stetzer, executive director of Wheaton's Billy Graham Center, says the timing is key, as well as the strategy.
We want to encourage people during this moment, a time of confusion and division, that maybe this is an opportunity not to vent about everything we have an opinion about on social media, but talk to our friends and neighbors about Jesus who've seen these ads.
The He Gets Us campaign will run through the end of 2022 and reach a wide array of Americans and potentially start all kinds of new conversations. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Coming up, the FBI says teenage boys are now the target of sextortion on online gaming platforms. We're going to explain next with some advice on how you can fight back. The FBI issued a warning saying teenage boys are being targeted with sextortion through online gaming platforms. Digital lifestyle contributor Caleb Kinchlow joins us now with more on this. So, Caleb, why did the FBI issue this warning?
So, Ephraim, what's been happening is that these teen boys are playing their game, and they're spending time talking to these girls. And then the girls get them to go to a social media platform or to their phone, and they ask them to send a nude or embarrassing photo. And then, surprise, it's actually not a girl at all. It's actually some scammer who says, if you don't give me money in the form of Cash App or gift cards, I'm going to release these images to the rest of the internet. And of course, it's an embarrassing and a really shocking, concerning moment for these teen boys and their parents.
So, Caleb, what makes this different from extortion?
Well, so, the thing is that with sextortion, particularly in this case, is that it is the exploitation of an individual by saying, if you don't provide me either sexual favors or money, I'm going to release some information about your sexual activity, whether that's what you've been doing or even with the images. And that's exactly what's happening here with these teen boys, this terrible form of exploitation.
What challenges have the FBI encountered in dealing with this crime?
So I reached out to the FBI, and they told me that the challenge has been is that most of these scammers are from other countries, and they're hiding out in the shadows. So it's making it very difficult to track who they are and where they are. However, they did tell me they have been working with the local law enforcement in other countries to give them tips and leads to lead to some of these different arrests. So
what are some tips that parents should know to help children avoid falling victim to this?
Well, the first tip is to inform your teens of, hey, be very leery when you're online playing with games and the information that you're releasing. And the second thing is, the red flag is if they try to get you to move to a different platform, particularly a social media platform, that's something to look out for, because they now have the option to screenshot, to record, and to share information about you that you wouldn't normally have on the video game. So be very leery in terms of those red flags.
What are you seeing in terms of the cases out there? I could have sworn I'm hearing even some instances of young men unfortunately committing suicide.
Of course, that's definitely something that has been happening and is a major concern, because these things are really traumatic. I mean, it's the idea of they feel like they have nothing, no ways to stop this thing. Once the information is out there, once it's on the internet, what do you do? So unfortunately, some people, have committed suicide or self-harm. Some actually have tried to go to police, but really, ultimately, what do you do in these type of cases?
Indeed, indeed. And once again, what's your word of warning and encouragement to parents on how to talk about this with their children?
The teens don't necessarily have the emotional maturity from, so that's why as parents, as educators, we have to warn them. Whatever you put out there online, whatever you send out to someone via your phone or anything, is out there. You lose control over what's going to happen with it. So you can end up in an extortion type of situation, just like this one.
All right, Caleb Kinchlow, thank you so much. Much appreciate your insight and the word of warning to parents there. Thank you. Still ahead, Fox News host Shannon Bream is giving voice to mothers and daughters of the Bible. We've got more for you on this coming up next. Stay with us. The Bible is full of stories about families and their influence. Fox News anchor Shannon Bream explores that topic in her latest book, The Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak. It explores how faith-filled women bless their families and, in some cases, change history. In a recent interview with CBN's Jenna Browder, Shannon shared how her own mother's faith set the standard that she still aspires to today.
What does it mean to have faith? Shannon Bream explores that in her newest book through the beautiful lens of mothers and daughters.
There's certainly truths all throughout the book that I think will be encouraging to people.
The Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak follows up on the success of her last book, The Women of the Bible Speak, a #1 New York Times bestseller.
So talk a little bit about that and then also what led you to write this new book. You know, I think that there was a real hunger and thirst, especially during the pandemic, which is when the first book was written in the real early days when there was so much we didn't know. People felt isolated. They were fearful. Many of them were out of their churches and kind of at home. And I think it was one of those books that it was just full of encouragement and inspiration.
And that's this one, too.
If you think about finances and family and infertility and all of these different things that women faced, they just really translated. So we knew there were still a lot of strong female stories in the Bible that hadn't been told or needed to be elaborated on. So we said, all right, let's plunge into these mother-daughter relationships.
One not so easy task, choosing who to include.
I think sometimes there are easy, obvious ones, like Mary, the mother of Jesus, and in the Old Testament telling of Esther. I think that there are some characters that just jump out at you that have had really big impact. Their stories have been known over time, even for people who don't really know the Bible. They have some interest or some knowledge of their stories. And then others, I think, I try to choose ones that really resonate with me. Some of these are really small stories where we don't even have the name of the woman involved, but maybe there was a miracle or we really saw God's work in their lives when they were desperate and needed him to show up.
Among her favorites.
You know, I have a little place in my heart for all of them. I think they're all special and beautiful. I love the initial story that we have of Jochebed and Miriam, who are the mother of Moses and the sister of Moses, because we have not just one, but two strong, brave women in this story. And I love how we see them work together as mother and daughter, too.
Moses and Miriam, both critical in the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt to the Promised Land, none of which would have been possible without Jochebed's bravery to float her son down the river. One theme throughout the book is the intimate connection between faith and family.
And so many of these stories, too, are people who may not be related by blood, but they become chosen or found family, which I think is all of us coming into the body of Christ, being adopted in. And I love the picture of that.
Think Naomi and Ruth, the mother and daughter-in-law duo. As Shannon points to her own mother as inspiration.
I was really blessed to grow up with a mom who was a bit of a baby Christian when I was little, too. And we almost kind of grew together in that she is the best example I know in my life of somebody who's truly Christ-like. I mean, hands and feet, showing up, not just saying, I'll pray for you and forgetting about it 5 minutes later. I mean, she's on her knees before the sun comes up, praying for people. If you're on her list, it's actually happening. She's the first one to show up when you have a tragedy, if you need a casserole, if you've had a baby, if you're in the hospital. I mean, my mom is the very living embodiment of what we should be, I think, as Christians, respecting other people, whether we agree or disagree with them politically or any other way. I mean, seeing them as God's creation and somebody who is worthy of his love and his mercy, the grace he's extended to us. And then we then, model that and give that to other people in our lives. So I've always had a really strong example in my mom. And I'm always telling her when I grow up one day, I want to be more like you. Really, she's reflecting Christ, but I'd love to be more like her as well.
If there's one message she hopes readers take away from this book.
I hope it's encouragement. I really hope that will draw them to God to see that he is for you in your family squabbles, in your high moments, in your low moments, when you've made bad decisions or good decisions. I mean, he is always present in your life. We see that in these women thousands of years ago. And we know it's true today, that we can see the evidence of that. So know that he came to save, not to condemn, but to give you his overwhelming love, his salvation. And he's just waiting for you to come to him.
And the book also includes study questions for each chapter, making it a great study of sorts to do with family and friends. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Coming up, one man's solution to those high gas prices. That's next. Some have found a solution to beat those high gas prices. They are hopping on their bikes. Thomas Page is one of those people. He says it is not just the high price of gas, it's the price of parking and owning a car. Shane O'Keefe with Metropolis Cycles says that there is an uptick with so many people looking to buy bicycles that they have had to add overnight shifts to keep up with the business. Time now for your Monday motivation. I pray that this thought will bless you. I know that we all have to make money. It's necessary for survival and to support those that we love. But here's a bit of advice for you. Don't chase paper, chase purpose, and that paper will follow. God is so much more concerned that you are living a life filled with purpose and not filled with paper. With that word, make this a marvelous Monday. That is a wrap for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online, cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again next time. Bye-bye.